Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roach Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. We just passed 500 subs. Thank you guys from the bottom of my heart. You guys have been amazing on this awesome journey, and I hope I can continue to make great content you guys will enjoy in the future. Now, the Week 7 of the XFL season is coming up, and I'm going to go over every single game of the Week 7 XFL slate and preview and predict who I think will win the games. Now, the first matchup is between the Seattle Sea Dragons and the Arlington Renegades. This should be a solid game right here because Seattle's 4-2, and right now they're actually been playing really good football. They've won 4 games in a row after an 0-2 start, and they beat the Orlando Guardians 26-19 last week. And even though Orlando is the bottom dweller of the XFL, they have been playing better football as of late, so Seattle was able to get a pretty good road win there. Ben DiNucci's having a great season. He's leading the XFL in passing yards per game with 1,505 yards. He has 11 touchdowns and 8 interceptions as well, and Josh Gordon's a really solid wide receiver, so I think Seattle is a really good offensive team. They do have some turnover issues on the offensive end. Ben DiNucci is a bit turnover prone, but he is still a solid quarterback, and their defense is solid overall. They're going to have to go on the road to face Arlington, who is 3-3 this season. And last week, Arlington did lose 15-9 to the San Antonio Brahmas. That was a really tough loss after the Arlington Renegades did beat the San Antonio Brahmas the first time that they played, but then they were not able to get the win over them last week. But Louis Perez is coming in for Arlington. The Renegades have cut Kyle Sloter, which was actually really surprising because Kyle Sloter did replace Drew Plitt a few weeks ago in the season, and Kyle Sloter had a really good year in the USFL, but Kyle Sloter did not have the success that he had in the USFL, so the Arlington Renegades have brought in Vegas Vipers quarterback Louis Perez, and this season he has 900 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. He's been solid this year, but he has been a bit turnover prone, but overall I do think that Louis Perez will be an upgrade for Arlington at the quarterback position, and I think this should be a really close game that goes down to the wire, one of the better XFL games of Week 7, but I'm going to go with the Seattle Sea Dragons to beat the Arlington Renegades 24-17. I think Seattle will have a little bit too much on offense, and the Sea Dragons will be able to stop the Arlington Renegades one too many times in this game. Now, the next game is the San Antonio Brahmas and the Vegas Vipers. Now, the San Antonio Brahmas, they're 2-4, and they're really struggling this season, but they were able to get a win over the Arlington Renegades last week, 15-9 in a revenge game over the Renegades. And Jack Cohn, he only has 667 passing yards, 5 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. He's really struggling this season through the air. He's had a lot of struggles passing the football. He is a good quarterback. He had a lot of success in college at Wisconsin and Notre Dame, but he's almost been benched several times for Jawan Pass for the San Antonio Brahmas, but still, no other quarterback's been able to supplant Jack Cohn as the starting quarterback, and I think San Antonio is a solid team. They have some upside. Their defense is actually pretty good, but their offense definitely cannot get it all together. But Vegas is 1-5, and last week they just lost to St. Louis 29-6, and this game's at Vegas, so cashless field as I call it because the field's just so bad for the Vegas Vipers. I think it's going to really be tough for both teams. It should be a really low-scoring game. And now that Louis Perez is no longer the starting quarterback for the Vegas Vipers, Brett Hundley is a solid quarterback, and he's thrown for 492 yards and 3 touchdowns with no picks, so he might actually be an upgrade over Louis Perez if he can get it all together. But Vegas is a really bad team on defense, and their offense is still struggling overall. Their offensive line isn't the best, so I do think that the San Antonio Brahmas will find a way to go on the road and beat the Vegas Vipers 17-14 in a close, low-scoring game. Both offenses are really going to struggle. Both teams have really struggled all season, but I think San Antonio will have a little bit more offense to be able to get this win. Now, the next game is a really intriguing game between the DC Defenders, who are the only undefeated team in the XFL at 6-0, and then you have the Orlando Guardians on their own field, and they're 0-6. They're the only winless team in the XFL, so this should be an intriguing matchup. DC last week beat the Houston Roughnecks 37-26 to continue to show the dominance of the DC Defenders. Jordan Teami was 887 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and interception, and De'Aaron King is 63 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air, but both quarterbacks are also dangerous on the ground. Both quarterbacks can run with their legs, and they're really good passers, so I think both quarterbacks are going to be really dangerous for the Orlando Guardians defense to try to slow down. You can't really key in on one quarterback because then they can bring the other one in and have a lot of success as well. DC also has a pretty solid defense, and you have the Beer Snake. No, it's not going to be at DC, so you're not going to have the Beer Snake at Orlando, but still DC's been really good on the road and at home, so I think overall DC's just a football football team that is rolling right now, and even though weird things have happened, and sometimes you can lose to a team that's your worse than, DC is definitely a team that's going to be able to overmatch Orlando at all positions, and Orlando is 0-6, and this game is going to be at home for them. And last week they did lose to Seattle 26-19. They barely lost to the Sea Dragons, and they were almost able to get their first win of the season, but they just cannot get out of their own way. Quentin Dormady, he had 641 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions so far this season, and he's actually replaced Paxton Lynch as the starting quarterback for the Orlando Guardians, even though Quentin Dormady was almost kicked off the team for claims that Quentin Dormady gave the playbook to another team, but still that has not been completely proven. He's still the quarterback for the Orlando Guardians, but overall, again, the Orlando Guardians just make too many mistakes. They can't get out of their own way. They turn it over at bad times, and they have a lot of bad penalties. I think that overall, this is a game that Orlando could hang around in if they play opportunistic football and want to be that first team to be able to knock off DC. But I do think that DC will be too much for Orlando. Orlando will make too many mistakes. They'll hang around for a while, but DC will pull away at the end. And I got the DC Defenders beating the Orlando Guardians 34-13. Now on to our last game of the Week 7 XFL slate, and this game actually is the most intrigued. Both teams are 4-2. I think this could be the best game of the Week 7 slate. Houston is 4-2, and the Roughnecks are coming off of a loss to the DC Defenders 37-26. That was a really tough loss. A lot of shenanigans happened in that game, including a Houston Roughnecks player squirting a water bottle at the referee. So overall, the Roughnecks lost their cool against the DC Defenders, so they'll have to find a way to be able to settle that down. This game is on their own field. I think that's really going to help out the Houston Roughnecks, but the St. Louis Battlehawks, they're 4-2 as well, and last week they beat the Vegas Vipers 29-6, and besides the DC Defenders, St. Louis has not lost to any team in the XFL. St. Louis has had a lot of success, and they've been able to handle business against all the other teams except DC. AJ McCarron has probably been playing some of the best football at quarterback of any quarterback in this league, potentially besides Ben DiNucci, but AJ McCarron is far less turnover prone. He has 1,322 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. He's playing great football. He does not turn the ball over much, and he's actually gotten a lot better at running the football as his time as quarterback has progressed in the XFL this season, and he's 32 years old, so he's actually running the football well for a quarterback of his age. And I think that if A.J. McCarron doesn't turn it over much, St. Louis has a really good chance to win because they perform well against every other team. But they haven't played Houston yet this year, and Houston has the same record. They've been really solid this season, and it was a tough loss for Houston against Seattle, and now they've lost to D.C., so I think Houston's had 2 tough games in a row that have really set the Roughnecks back. Both games were on the road, but now Houston's back home, and Brandon Silvers, he has 1,300 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions this season. He's been one of the top quarterbacks in the XFL as well, just like A.J. McCarron, and he has had a little bit of struggles the past couple of weeks, and Cole McDonald is the backup quarterback for Houston. He might play in this game some as well because of the fact he has a lot of experience as well at quarterback in college, and he actually is a pretty solid runner as well, and he has some decent stats, putting up over 200 yards and a touchdown so far this season, and the Roughnecks use him for the conversion plays. But I do think overall that whether Brandon Silvers or Cole McDonald is at quarterback, the fact this game is at home, and this is a game between 2 really even teams. Both are at 4-2. I think that the Houston Roughnecks will find a way to get this close win, 28-27 over the St. Louis Battlehawks. I think it's going to be the game of the week in the XFL Week 7 slate. It should be a great game down to the wire, but I think Houston will find a way to get the win. So those are the Week 7 XFL games. I think these are some great matchups. It's going to be really interesting to see who wins and loses these games and whether my predictions end up being right. But it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with these games. I'm looking forward to the Week 7 XFL slate and hope all the games are a lot of fun. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below which teams you think will win the Week 7 XFL games. Follow me on Twitter as well, and I will see you next time.